It's time for us to deal with something far more important. At 7:50 a.m. it is Thursday the 5th of May, and we take all of your correspondence very seriously. So somebody emailed, I actually don't know what the email address is. Is it info@offtheball.com? To Off the Ball Sport. Hi Owen, I have listened to you regularly on News Talk. You are very good and professional, but never take on board anything that comes before the word but. You are very good and professional, but there is one thing that really bugs me. Have you a problem giving the British, or English in particular, credit? This morning you used United States in a segment. Why do you use UK constantly, yet use United States? A lot of your reports are based on English posts, for example, Premier League, racing, boxing, tennis, etc. Yet you rarely say the person in question is English or is taking place in England. You nearly always say in the UK. Why can't you say the words England, English, Britain, Great Britain? Especially when you use United States repeatedly. You have a huge responsibility in the position you are. Do you not realise that younger people listening to you are influenced by your clearly biased reporting? Looking forward to your reply. Yours sincerely. That was sent on Friday the 22nd of April. And then on the 2nd of May to Off the Ball Sport. I sent you an email almost 2 weeks ago in regard to what I see as you very anti-English style of reporting. I appreciate you are busy. I am busy. I took the time to write an email about something I felt strongly about. I'm not naive enough to think you will change your ways because of my email. However, I would expect the decency and basic manners of a reply. I am now going to email the head of sport in News Talk and also make a complaint to News Talk about your disgusting actions. And the third one there was...
Okay, so I've prepared an official statement in response to this. It's Sheehan. It's spelled S-H-E-A-H-A-N, not S-H-E-E-H-A-N. Thank you.
OTB AM.
Right, to the big European action last night. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, no. Stop right there. Why is it, now that Owen's finally been outed, no mention of the anti-Scottish stuff? Again, nothing. If you're taking time to put a magnifying glass in his behaviour, just go the full way. That's all I'm asking, even-handedness.
Owen is pro-Glasgow, pro-Edinburgh, but for some reason he just doesn't like Aberdeen.
There's my point. There's my
something about it rubbed him up the wrong way. Didn't like the weather.
Team's beginning with A. How can we start like this after a night like that?
I don't know what happened last night. We're trying to establish, is there flakiness, or is it just that, like, because certainly a lot of the reaction was, typical City, this is, look at Pep. But actually, Real Madrid are a team full of absolute winners who are cutthroat, who are just coming off the back of a league title where they've really cantered to the league and not gotten that much credit for it because of the difficulties at Atletico and Barca. And, you know, many of those players have 3 or 4 Champions League medals. So should we really be that surprised that they're able to dig something out when they're at home, when everything's on the line? Like, I realise it's shocking that it happens in such a short space of time, but are we too inclined to blame than give credit?
I don't know. I think analytical, but your blame, I think, is for your social media viewers. The larger part of the people you're referring to were off the pitch by the time the game turned round. So Real Madrid are full of hard-bitten, characterful serial winners. But Christian Modric and Casemiro, you know, were gone by the time the turnaround happened. And the ones you're talking about, would be Courtois, who's saved from Grealish, is astonishing. Absolutely. I'm not quite sure how he manages to get a stud to it and why that stud is enough to divert the ball. And Benzema, you know, people talk about a slightly quiet game during the bulk of it. That cutback on the touchline for Rodrigo to dart in, for a guy who's playing through pain, for a guy of his age, to be not only that athletic and gymnastic, but to direct the ball in the only place where Rodrigo could get to it, I thought was astonishing. To convert the penalty again, I mean, coming to this tie with a record of missing 3 of his previous 5 penalties, makes Benzema. I I cannot believe that there'll be a different Ballon d'Or winner when it's awarded. It has to be him. But the reason I said blame when you mentioned the word needs to be taken away when we took a scalpel to this game to examine it. At the beginning of the season, I heard you, Bobby emailed into you or wrote into you about Kane needing to go to City win trophies. That needs a little bit more looking at. At the beginning of the season, or in the summer, pardon me, who did City try to buy? Not just Harry Kane. They knew they needed a goal scorer. They knew they needed a 9. They went for him. They went all in. Daniel Levy said no, they couldn't get him. The reason that I think in November I had a little punt on Liverpool to win the title was I couldn't believe that if a series of football brains as impressive as there are around City said we need Harry Kane, I couldn't believe that their season would not show a lack of that player, not necessarily him, but an outright goal scorer. And if you sum up this whole tie, which my arithmetic isn't very good, but it was 290 minutes plus a 30 minutes. What does that make? Does that make 210? No, 220? 210 minutes. Madrid were behind for 179 of the 210 minutes. And in the first leg now, for a knockout semi-final tie, if you only analyse based on last night, I think it's a mistake. And City should have had a 3-goal margin from the home leg. And we kind of just tucked that away after that game, going onward to the Bernabeu. And I admit that having seen the way Real Madrid defended in Europe against Paris Saint-Germain in the vast majority of the 2 games, and then Chelsea in the second leg, and for little spells at Stamford Bridge, I expected City to win. I can't deny that. I did expect going into the game that City would have the players to keep the ball well, that they would defend better than Real Madrid, and that they would probably win 2-1. That was my idea, and therefore we tucked away and forgot a little bit about the fact that they blew this tie at home.
They definitely did blow it at home, right? They also then appear to have been able to blow it in the last 15 minutes of normal time. But and this is going to sound a bit weird, but the first 15 minutes of the second half seemed to give Real Madrid a lot more courage about what the potential outcome was going to be, even though they didn't manage to score in that time. There was like a reservoir at the end of the game where they're like, hang on, we created a lot of chances earlier, we just didn't hit the target with them, which maybe gave them the comfort to keep going. So, like, there's a million different moments, as there are in any 210-minute game, that you can point to that ends up on a knife edge like that last night. Is there a trend beyond the lack of a goal scorer? Because they scored loads of goals. Is there a trend in that over those 2 legs that Manchester City have that suggests that this is still short of being a Champions League winning team, that there's something still wrong in the makeup of the team or in what they're trying to do?
That's such a gigantic question that for once in our 20-something year friendship, I'm going to be a little bit tentative. For my taste, when you play Pep Guardiola football, you need to be exceptional at it, absolute exceptional. I think it's a slight high wire act that it has less capacity to go wrong or have an off night or have mistakes than other more robust, more basic styles of football, in my opinion. I think it's extremely, it's whether you appreciate it or like it or don't, it's quite high art. It's quite complicated. And I think that your players are drilled in a way of acting and way of thinking, which isn't about, we're in this, we're street fighting, we're going to be at the way in which these players are drilled for each of the clubs he's coached. I'm not solely talking about Manchester City now. And my point of reference, I saw more Barcelona football under Pep than I did Bayern Munich and City. I would have seen more Pep Guardiola time than when he was in Bayern Munich. And I interviewed a lot of interviewed players at Bayern Munich under him and at City under him. I got to know the Barcelona players under him much more. And they talked a lot about needing to be 1-0 up. They talked a lot about how, they could struggle if they didn't go ahead. And they felt fear. They felt mortal. They just played in a different way. And for my taste, City, when they're a team of extremes, if they feel fit mentally and physically, there are very few teams that can cope with them and keep up with them, keep up with their movements, keep up with their decision making. And it was movement a week ago that completely undid Madrid. I thought that City were able to dart into spaces that Real Madrid were bewildered by, couldn't keep up with. And yet there was a complete change of energy. Real Madrid I don't know how to explain the fact that if you're talking about City's culture there, Real Madrid's culture, we now would be wrong to say it rests in Kroos and Modric and Casemiro and Courtois and Benzema, because it was Camavinga and Rodrigo, extremely young, not brought up in the Real Madrid culture, who did extraordinary things in added time.
Well, this is interesting, right? Because I actually had to Google some of the players on the bench last night for City. The unused players were two goalkeepers. Scott Carson's still one of them. Zach Steffen, who we obviously most recently saw have that howler. Nathan Ake, everybody knows him. But then it's Conrad Egan-Riley, it's Cole Palmer, it's James McAtee, and Romeo Lavia. I hadn't heard of Lavia. He's a Belgian. None of those players are of the standard of Champions League semi-final second leg. I'm looking at my bench and I'm going to bring them on. Now, the players that he did bring on, obviously, Sterling and Grealish, Gundogan, Fernandinho and Zinchenko. So it's not like the bench didn't have 5 players that he could use, but it feels a little bit like the squad is not as developed as you might think for the billion they've spent.
I think it's a handy thing to say. I think Cole Palmer looks as if he's going to be extraordinary. Your point is about last night. You know, Madrid didn't use their entire bench either, and I think that it's more about what happened from those who came on.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that they went and they got Vinicius and they got Rodrigo and that, like, for all of the ills and the wanton waste of money that Real Madrid have had in recent seasons, they have also tried to buy the best. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm...
No, Jared. Listen, but you made 2 points there. Listen, you looked at City's bench and you had a slightly critical eye when you put a magnifying glass on those that didn't come off the bench. First of all, they didn't come off the bench. You know, so I don't think that's why City went out. Secondly, you're right that Madrid have had... They were extremely articulate about it, or Florentino Perez was, when they were signing Vinicius and Rodrigo. What they didn't say was it was caused by pain. It's Newton's law of every action and equal and opposite reaction. When Neymar went to Barcelona, he had been due to go to Real Madrid. Real Madrid absolutely 100% believed they'd signed him. The pain and the humiliation for Florentino Perez of Sandro Rosé saying to Neymar, come on over here, the water's lovely, and Neymar going, yes. There might have been some financial incentives involved in it. Who knows? Football's strange. And Florentino said to his scouting staff, Juni Calafat particularly, get me the next 3 or 4 Neymars. We'll stick it up them. There are very few things in life, not mind football, that are more of a motivation than being humiliated and saying we're coming back from this. So they went out and they said, find us the Brazilians. Now, for Renier, who's at Borussia Dortmund, the experiment failed. But for Vinicius and Rodrigo, they've bought 2 young, very extraordinary men, very characterful men, who have a tendency to score or make huge goals. And in the meantime, Florentino Perez said, we cannot compete with the state clubs unless we buy the world's best young players before anybody else sees them. So it's been an outright policy, and it's been a policy to buttress the 800 million they've spent in the stadium. So the stadium looked quite nice last night, and I think the stadium hosted a small element of why Real Madrid won, because the fans, although there are small smatterings of fans, I can't promise it was Real Madrid fans. There's brilliant footage in this country today of stuff that's a little bit like Istanbul, with people just outside the Bernabeu scattering and trying to run back in as the first Rodrigo goal goes in. But the majority of the fans not only didn't leave, they believed. It's just it's an hypnotic condition. But how it gets past to the youngers, I'm not quite sure, because you can tell them. But what we experience over our careers is we see that the absolute fire that we witness in great sportsmen and women usually is not part of a club culture. The club culture fosters it, grows it, but it has to be in them to begin with. They have to be made of the right stuff. How do you scout that? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But the youngers have got it at Real Madrid, and City lost to a club last night that over the coming years, that arena they were playing in, I mean, imminently it won't be a football arena. It's an events arena with the pitch sunken down and taken away underneath the Paseo Castellano so that it's going to be rock concerts, it's going to be conferences, it's going to be exhibitions, and they're going to make money hand over fist. And finally, instead of just buying the world's best youngsters, they'll be back to buying the world's Galacticos again. We're entering a Real Madrid era, although, in my honest opinion, I'll say it now and I'll defend it later, they're not going to beat Liverpool in Paris.
Before we move on to that, just if I could do some like amateur psychoanalysis on Pep and dig a little bit deeper into this. Like when you talk about the first leg being the leg where Manchester City essentially lose this, like Pep afterwards was very, very positive, like really saying, we've beaten one of the best teams in the world, very, very happy, like kind of reminiscent of that very famous Pep interview where he's like, I'm more happy than you believe, when the reporter asks, why aren't you so happy, that there's always this sort of sense from Pep, not always, but often a sense from Pep trying to put forward a more positive sense of things than you really believe they are inside his own head. And you get why he does that. You get why he wants to send out that message. But I wonder, did that message seep into his own consciousness and into the consciousness of the team, that they were further ahead in this tie than they really were in between the two games?
So now we're only dealing in opinions. I'm trying to get in the head of somebody as complex as Pep Guardiola is. He's like trying to do one of these Rubik's Cubes blindfolded.
Yeah.
I think largely we'll be urinating into the wind. But knowing him,
away, please.
My answer, somebody's got urine on their trousers, Owen, and it's one of us, and it's the anti-English one. Look, the thing I would sorry about going back to that. The thing I would say about knowing him is no. The players are wholly accustomed to Pep's idiosyncrasies and what he says to the cameras, with whom he has a hate relationship most of the time. He's not what he's saying to them, and I don't think either the players or Pep were in any way shaped by what he said to the public after that game. They live and breathe. For example, again, when Pep ever talks about his brand of football information, he only ever says it's about winning, not entertaining, not being cleverer than another coach. It's about winning. And he says, why does he want to have the ball, possess the ball, and press the ball? He said, well, the further the ball is away from our own goal, the happier I'll be. He said, I'm a much more defensive coach than people give me credit for. I don't want to let in goals. He came out of that game, I will guarantee you, disgusted that they didn't score 8 and almost as disgusted that they let in 3. And that's the way that the players will have approached this second leg. And let's be frank. I think if we try and claw a City narrative out of what happened in the couple of minutes when Rodrigo scored twice, my opinion is we'll probably be making a mistake, because the first goal, genuinely, you can say who was moving with Rodrigo. I accept that. The first goal was utterly extraordinary. Benzema's action in that first goal should live in our brains like forever. The analysis of why City didn't go through will pale and peter out over the coming weeks. What Benzema did ranks, up there with stuff that we saw when we were kids and we still remember with a glow. That's my honest opinion. I think we saw utter and complete brilliance.
Here is one that I just want to read you. Incredible finish to that game last night. If Real win the final, is there an argument to be made that the Kroos, Modric, Casemiro midfield is better than Xavi, Busquets, Iniesta?
I suppose if you're locked away in a high security prison and you've nothing better to do, yeah. That's fine. Man. I love it. I love it when this comes up. It's it's a really easy way to waste a good interview opportunity.
You should. I wonder what Kroos and Modric and Casemiro would say at this stage.
Oh, they would probably say, "Who cares?" When my experience of, again, a male and female sport is that when you get players of such elite ability, do you think that if you had the fortune of having Casemiro, Kroos, and Modric on the show, they would go, "Yeah, they were pants." They were wildly overrated. That Xavi could barely play. And Iniesta, it went on off his shin in the World Cup final. No. Do they have different elements to them? Yes, they do. Are there deep similarities between Casemiro and Busquets in their relationship with yellow and red cards? Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities. But I mean, how would on what comparison points would you start to tick off the yeses and nos between Kroos and Xavi, or Kroos and Iniesta? I think it's a nonsensical idea. Let's just from my taste, there are a vast array of differences: height, physique, style of playing. But if you talk about achievement and character, then from my personal taste, it's like you pay your money, you take your choice. If somebody wants to say, I prefer the attitude and mentality and style of playing of Kroos, Modric and Casemiro, I'll salute that flag. Fair play. Go on, enjoy yourself. Better than, well, that's just pants, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, it's a reductive way of talking about these, but that trio, I think, is definitely going to go down in footballing history.
For sure.
Although the fact that, as you pointed out, they're off the field last night is one of those little caveats that we'll need to remember. If they go on ahead and somehow manage to overturn Liverpool in the final, then we can come back to that. So I guess to just reframe this again, let's not just analyse the minute, let's analyse the two ties, and let's remember that Man City were chronically in need, they thought, of an out-and-out number 9. Is there, this is again speculation, is there a point where Pep has had enough of this, or is the singular desire to win the Champions League with Manchester City going to come to define him, and this is his white whale and he sticks at it like Ferguson stuck at it until he eventually got there?
First of all, I think he's quite happy at City. I think that the idea of him being utterly obsessed by the Champions League, that diminishes a little bit in that, what have they been? I forget the year before the final. So they're now finalists, semi-finalists. Were they semi-finalists, finalists, semi-finalists? I think a couple of seasons ago. Listen, I'm reaching. I think that when you are near but you don't do it, I don't think the obsession absolutely grows exponentially. I think if you're analytical like Pep, you know that you're a little bit of luck or an outstanding performance for your team or a better striker away from winning it. I think the trajectory, if the narrative weren't exposed about Pep's blinding obsession about winning the Champions League, and we were looking at a side that's never won it, having been final, semi-final, you'd be saying, well, with the addition of Harlan, this is coming. So I think the way we tell this story can be tilted a little bit because Pep is such a divisive, idiosyncratic guy, and who, because he taunts and teases when he gets questions he doesn't like, it piques everybody's interest. And those who don't enjoy him, don't like him, are loving the opportunity to rub salt in the wound. And I think that while he patently craves winning it, to think about it as something as an all-consuming obsession, the only reason he would stay at a club, again, I don't think that gets the measure of Guardiola. If he stays at this club where he's at now, which certainly for this season I expect him to do, it's not going to be because he sits at night, with who was that super fan in Alan Partridge who had Partridge tattooed on his body and images of him everywhere, and Alan runs away and shouts, "You're a mentalist." I don't think we're ever going to see little Foden going into Pep's flat and seeing tattoos of the Champions League all over his eyelids and run away and shout, "You're a mentalist." I also don't think that Pep is either tired or beaten. And, I could be wrong, but I don't expect him to take a sabbatical. I do think he's happy at City. I do think he thinks he's close to it. Until last night, there was a distinct possibility of them becoming English and European champions. And they lost a side which is obsessed too. Yeah. Obsessed. And we treat that as a healthy thing about Real Madrid.
No, totally. And that has been incredibly successful for them. I was asking if there's a bit of a sliding doors moment then in terms of the transfer policy. Do they break the bank to get Declan Rice because they feel like, as well as the striker, that a midfielder, somebody who could be an extra defender for them if they wanted to inject that, whatever it takes next season to make sure they get over the line? Is this the summer they do that, or is Haaland the only thing that comes in the summer and you think, okay, that's fine, we're going to add that one piece because we're just one piece away?
I don't know their finances well enough to give you that answer. I'd be bluffing. I don't think there's a point in doing that. I think my opinion is that the Harlan thing has been very close to agreed for some weeks. I'll be fascinated. I'll be absolutely fascinated. Harlan is a young man. We forget that because he's bestial in how he plays and performs, and he's bright and he's articulate. His agent just died, and there's no question he'll have sat and watched that last night. Does it influence you if you think Real Madrid are still interested in pairing you and Mbappe did you look at that last night and go, whoa, I want a slice of that attitude. I want a slice of that fan base. I want a slice of that glory. I have no idea if it influences you or not. And in business terms, I think the Real Madrid, Harland, I think they were second runners after City, with Bayern Munich third. I personally don't think Harlan is going to Bayern Munich. I sat with people from a very high-ranking Premier club a couple of mornings ago with them saying, in their analytical view, the Bundesliga is in decline, and that the teams there are not exceptional, and that is part of the reason that Bayern Munich haven't trotted on this tournament, because they're being measured against slightly lesser sides week in, week out, and therefore I think Haaland will know that isn't staying there. I think that the City thing is extremely close. But if you walk, we're all still slack-jawed about that, and we don't have an opportunity to go and earn 30 million a season by playing for them. I just wonder, speculatively, what's Haaland's thoughts this morning, having watched that.
So that might still be up for grabs. And if that's the case, then you'd have to assume City will load up elsewhere to try and.
I'm only interested, Ger. I'm only interested in it if you're a youngster. If you're, what is he, 21, and you're sitting and watch that, and you know that there's still a possibility, and your world's been tipped upside down because your agent's no longer alive. It just intrigues me.
Playing at a brand spanking new stadium alongside the likes of Camavinga and Rodrigo over the next little while, that doesn't sound just too unappetizing.
Sort of things.
The other thing is that you're the one then who becomes the messiah at City, where you have in your memory your dad, that shirt, that colour. You're the one who delivers for them what nobody else could deliver.
I'm not making a case that he changed his mind. I just think it would be naive to think that because all our industry is obsessed about is figures and money, for us to believe, and I know this, I believe you do too, that footballers also think about what am I working, once the money is equal, once I'm about to become, a billionaire, how will it be? What will living be like?
Yeah. What's the weather like?
I have a family. What will the football be like? What's the culture like?
What's the golf course like?
Well, I don't know. No, don't be annoying me now.
Come on, we got to finish.
I'm really glad he was sitting on his sofa at home with his baked beans and toast watching that. That's, Hi, Gareth.
There's no prospect of another minute's football for him or Eden Hazard for Real Madrid ever, is there?
Well, no. Don't pair them. Don't pair them, Jared. There isn't a prospect of another minutes for Bale. In the view and the voice of just about every Madridista, but Ancelotti's different. I couldn't swear to you that Ancelotti won't allow Bale on for a minute. It's at one of the thank you games for the league, because Ancelotti is made of different stuff. Would he be just about the only person? He probably would care more about that than Bale would do. I hate seeing Bale injured, and I wish him the absolute best, except in any putative playoff for the World Cup between Wales and Scotland, when, I hope he's got a back spasm then. Neither he nor his agents have in any way covered themselves in glory over the last year, and the mudslinging they do to Real Madrid, it takes no account of the way in which this situation has degenerated on their side as well. And if Gareth Bale is sitting watching that at home last night and not going, gee whiz, whoa, I wish I'd even, been on the bench, come off the bench for that. If he feels no pang having watched that, then he's made of even more different gravy than I thought he was. But don't pair them with Hazard. Hazard has had the plate taken out of a metal plate taken out of an ankle injury. That boy made a huge mistake about eating crisps and drinking beer in the summer he was joining Real Madrid and joined the club fat. Since then, it's not been his fault. He's been dogged by injuries. He's been superseded by players who are performing out of their skin. He wants to be there. His contract remains. I don't think he'll accept a move. His contract lasts. Bales is up. I think it would be sensible for Hazard to move on. I think that it's one of these things that just hasn't worked. But I go back to the fact that his current problems today date back to a moment in a Paris Saint-Germain match at the Bernabeu where Real Madrid were trouncing Paris Saint-Germain, and Meunier stepped on Hazard's ankle, and since then his ankle's been, chungo. And his attitude and his behaviour and his willingness to be ready for duty differentiate himself from Gareth Bale, who for 2/3 of his career needed to be defended and lauded and praised and better appreciated, and then for the final third has made the bed he's lying in.
He phoned it in for sure. Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million. It's Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts there. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that last element of things and Bale and Hazard, I think it's pretty obvious that it's not going to be a final that's going to see those two players partake in. I think that, I mean, they've had such a great couple of rounds now at this point. It's going to be pretty similar to last night. The only change that you might see is, like, does someone like Camavinga actually, has he played his way into the starting team, or Rodrigo maybe even? Probably not is the answer, but like, Liverpool are going to be entering that game with a little bit of caution about what the team sheet is actually going to be, and a little bit of uncertainty about what sort of team they're going. Well, no, sorry, what sort of team they're going to face is pretty obvious. Yeah. They're going to have the lion's share of possession. They're going to have most of the chances, and Real Madrid will probably come up with one late chance to equalise it once Liverpool are 1-0 up or something.
Start of the second half, Real Madrid couldn't score, but did have more possession against a City side who we expected to have more possession. It was a weird kind of something happened. I don't know what it was.